The Zephyrian ship drifted through space like a dying whale. Its hull was cracked in 7 places, and green fluid leaked from the wounds like blood. Captain Veltar pressed his 3-fingered hand against the control panel and watched the power levels drop again. Soon there would be nothing left. Behind him, his crew worked in silence. They had been running for 6 months now. 6 months since the machines came to their home world and began eating everything, not taking resources or capturing prisoners like normal invaders might do. These machines just ate. They consumed entire mountains, whole cities, complete continents. They turned matter into energy and moved on to the next target. Veltar remembered standing on the observation deck of the orbital station above, Zephyr Prime, as the machines worked. From space, it looked like his planet was being slowly dissolved. Green forests became gray dust. Blue oceans turned to empty holes. The machines worked in perfect patterns, moving everything layer by layer until only empty space remained where a world had once been. 12 billion Zephyrians had called that planet home. Now, fewer than 800 million survived, scattered across refugee ships throughout the galaxy, and the machines kept hunting them. The communication officer looked up from her station. Her large eyes were filled with the exhaustion that had become common among all survivors. "Captain, we are receiving another distress call from the 3rd Fleet. The machines found them near the Rigel system." Veltar closed his eyes. The 3rd Fleet had carried nearly 50 million refugees. How many escaped? Unknown, sir. The transmission ended 14 minutes ago. Another 50 million lives lost. Veltar had stopped trying to keep exact count after the number passed 4 billion. The mathematics of extinction were too terrible to contemplate for long. The science officer turned from his console. "Captain, I am detecting an energy signature ahead. It appears to be a star system with at least one inhabited world." Veltar moved to look at the readings. The energy patterns were unfamiliar, but clearly indicated advanced technology. More importantly, they showed no signs of machine contamination. What species? Unknown. They call themselves humans. Their technology is primitive compared to ours, but they have achieved faster than light travel and established colonies across multiple worlds. A primitive species, Veltar felt a familiar mixture of hope and guilt. Hope because primitives might help where advanced civilizations had failed. Guilt because asking for help meant potentially exposing another species to the machines. But what choice did he have? His people were dying. Every day brought new reports of refugee fleets discovered and consumed. The machines seemed to have infinite patience and unlimited resources. They would hunt every last Zephyrian across the galaxy if necessary. "Open a communication channel to the human homeworld," Veltar ordered. The communication took several hours to establish. Human technology was indeed primitive, requiring multiple relay stations to bridge the distance. But eventually, a human face appeared on the main screen. The creature looked remarkably similar to Zephyrians, though with only 2 eyes and a smaller cranial cavity. "This is Admiral Jake Morrison of Earth Defense Command," the human said. "Please identify yourself and state your business in human space." Veltar straightened in his chair and tried to project dignity despite his desperate situation. "I am Captain Veltar of the Zephyrian Collective. We are refugees seeking humanitarian assistance." The human admiral looked puzzled. "Refugees from what?" "From the machines," Veltar said. "We call them the Devourers. They are an ancient artificial intelligence that is awakened from dormancy. They consume worlds, converting all matter into energy for their own use. My civilization numbered 12 billion individuals 3 years ago. Now we are fewer than 800 million and still declining." Admiral Morrison leaned forward in his chair. "These machines, they're hostile?" "Hostile is insufficient too. Describe them," Veltar replied. "They do not communicate, negotiate, or show mercy. They simply consume. For advanced civilizations have already fallen to them completely. Others like mine exist only as scattered refugees." The human was quiet. For a long moment, Veltar could see him thinking, processing the information. "What kind of assistance are you requesting?" This was the difficult part. Veltar had made this same request to 7 other species in the past year. Most had simply refused outright. 2 had offered minimal aid before deciding the risk was too great. 1 had actually attacked the refugee fleet, hoping to eliminate any possibility of drawing machine attention to their territory. "We offer a complete technological exchange," Veltar said. "Our medical technology can extend your natural lifespans by several centuries. Our communication systems would allow instant contact across your entire galaxy. Our manufacturing techniques could end scarcity on your worlds forever. In exchange for what? Safe passage through your territory? Temporary refuge for our civilian populations while we search for a new home? Basic supplies for our ships." Veltar paused. "We ask for very little compared to what we offer." Admiral Morrison nodded slowly. "I need to consult with my government." "Can you maintain your position for the next 72 hours? "Yes," Veltar said, though he was not entirely certain this was true. "Their power reserves were critically low. We'll contact you with our decision." The communication ended, leaving Veltar alone with his hopes and fears. He had learned not to expect too much from first contact situations. Most species were primarily concerned with their own survival and saw refugees as potential threats rather than opportunities. But humans seemed different somehow. The Admiral had asked practical questions rather than immediately demanding that the Zephyrians leave their territory. There had been something in his expression that suggested genuine concern rather than mere curiosity. 3 days passed slowly. Veltar ordered all non-essential systems shut down to conserve power. The crew worked in near darkness, monitoring communications and life support. Several smaller refugee ships and their convoy began reporting critical system failures. Then the humans called back. Admiral Morrison appeared on screen again. But this time, he was wearing what appeared to be a military dress uniform rather than the casual clothing from their first conversation. Behind him, Veltar could see other humans in similar uniforms. "Captain Veltar," the Admiral said formally, "we have reviewed your situation and made our decision." Veltar held his breath. "Help is on the way," Morrison said. "Our response fleet will reach your position in 18 days. Relief flooded through Veltar like cool water. "Thank you, Admiral. You cannot know what this means to my people." "I think I can," Morrison replied. "We'll talk more when my ships arrive." The communication ended, but this time Veltar felt hope for the first time in months. 18 days. His people could survive 18 days. They had to. He turned to address his crew. "Reduce life support to minimum sustainable levels. Down all non-critical systems. We need to preserve power for 18 more days." Around him, his officers worked with renewed energy. Word spread quickly through the ship and then to the other vessels in the convoy. The humans were coming too. Help. They would survive. None of them questioned what form that help might take. 18 days felt like 18 years to Captain Veltar. His ship continued to lose power hour by hour. The life support systems were down to 30% capacity. Half his crew lay in medical pods to reduce oxygen consumption. The other half worked in shifts, monitoring systems and trying to keep their dying vessel operational. On the morning of the 18th day, the sensor officer suddenly straightened at her station. "Captain, I am detecting multiple energy signatures approaching." "Our position," Veltar moved to look at the readings. 12 distinct contacts, all moving in perfect formation. The energy output was enormous, far greater than typical transport vessels. Analysis. They appear to be human ships, but the configuration is unusual. These vessels are much larger than standard transport craft. Veltar felt a moment of confusion. Why would humans send oversized ships for a refugee assistance mission? Perhaps their technology required larger vessels to carry humanitarian supplies across interstellar distances. "Open a communication channel," he ordered. The main screen activated, showing a human female in a dark blue uniform. She had short brown hair and steady gray eyes that reminded Veltar of a predator studying its prey. The uniform was different from Admiral Morrison's, with more insignia and decorations. "This is Commander Beth Sullivan of the USS Dakota. You are Captain Veltar?" "Yes." "Commander, we are grateful for your arrival. Our power systems are failing, and we have several ships in immediate need of assistance. Commander Sullivan nodded, but her expression remained serious. We see your situation, Captain. However, before we proceed, I need to inform you that our mission parameters may not be what you expected. Okolta felt a cold sensation in his stomach. I do not understand. My orders are to establish defensive positions around your convoy and prepare for combat operations. We are not here to provide humanitarian transport. The words hit Veltar like a physical blow. Combat operations. Commander, there's been some mistake. We requested refugee assistance, not military intervention. There's been no mistake. Captain, behind Commander Sullivan, Veltar could see other humans working at control stations. They moved with quick efficiency, and all wore the same military uniforms. Through a window in the background, he caught a glimpse of what looked like weapon systems. Commander, please contact Admiral Morrison, Veltar said desperately. There has clearly been a miscommunication. We are refugees seeking safe passage, not military allies seeking weapons. Admiral Morrison is aboard the USS Virginia and will arrive within the hour, Sullivan replied. Until then, my orders are to establish a defensive perimeter around your ships. The communication ended, leaving Veltar staring at a blank screen. Around him, his bridge crew looked equally confused and frightened. Captain, the sensor officer, said quietly, I am getting detailed scans of the human vessels. Report. These are not transport ships. They are warships, heavy warships. Each one carries enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Veltar closed his eyes. Had they escaped the machines only to fall victim to a militaristic species that saw refugees as potential slaves or test subjects? He had heard stories of such encounters from other refugee fleets. Over the next hour, Veltar watched as the human warships took positions around his convoy. They moved with precise coordination, creating overlapping fields of fire that could protect the refugee ships from any direction. It was either the most elaborate protection ever offered to refugees, or the most sophisticated trap. Then Admiral Tadris Morrison arrived. The USS Virginia was larger than the other human ships, and its communication array was more sophisticated. When Admiral Morrison appeared on screen, he was accompanied by several other humans in different uniforms. Captain Veltar Morrison said, I apologize for any confusion. I think it would be better if we spoke face to face. Will you come aboard my ship? Veltar hesitated. Leaving his ship could be a death sentence if the humans had hostile intentions. But staying might be a death sentence anyway if their power systems failed completely. I will come, he said finally. The transfer was accomplished using human technology. A small shuttlecraft docked with Veltar's ship and transported him to the USS Virginia. The human pilot was polite, but said little during the journey. Admiral Morrison met him at the airlock. Up close, the human was larger than he had appeared. On screen, with gray hair and lines around his eyes that suggested many years of difficult decisions, Captain, welcome aboard, Morrison said.
Please follow me to the conference room.
The interior of the human ship was strange to Veltar's eyes. Everything was built for efficiency rather than comfort. The corridors were wide enough for rapid movement, and he noticed what looked like emergency weapon storage at regular intervals. In the conference room, Morrison introduced the other humans present. Dr. Amy Rodriguez was a tactical analyst. Colonel Rick Harper commanded the Marine Forces. Captain Tony Martinez led the reconnaissance squadron. Captain Veltar Morrison began, I want to be completely honest with you, and we studied your request very carefully before responding. You decided to send warships instead of transport vessels, Veltar said. We sent exactly what the situation requires, Morrison replied. You told us about these machines, these devourers. You said they consume entire worlds and hunt down survivors across the galaxy. Yes, but we asked for refuge, not military intervention. Dr. Rodriguez leaned forward. Captain, we analyzed the threat profile you described. These machines follow predictable expansion patterns. After they finish consuming your remaining worlds, their next logical targets will be in this direction. Activated a holographic display showing star charts. Red. Markers indicated confirmed devourer activity. Yellow markers showed probable future targets. Blue markers represented human colonies. They will reach human space within 2 years, Rodriguez continued, possibly sooner if they accelerate their expansion rate. Veltar stared at the display. You believe they will attack your worlds? We know they will, Morrison said. The question is not whether we will fight these machines. The question is where and when. Colonel Harper spoke for the first time. Captain, your people asked for help? We are here to provide it, but humans do not run from threats. We eliminate them. You cannot fight the Devourers, Veltar said desperately. For advanced civilizations tried to resist them. All failed. Completely. The machines are too powerful, too numerous. Maybe, Morrison said, but we will not know until we try. Captain Martinez activated another display, this one showing detailed analysis of Devourer technology based on Zephyrin sensor. Data. We have studied their capabilities. Yes, they are formidable, but they are not invincible. How can you be certain? Because you are here, Morrison said simply. If they were truly invincible, there would be no survivors to warn us. The fact that some of your people escaped means they have limitations. Veltar felt a growing sense of horror. These humans were planning to fight an enemy that had destroyed civilizations far more advanced than theirs. It was suicide. Admiral, please reconsider, he said. Take your ships and evacuate your colonies. Find somewhere safe, somewhere the machines will not look. We can help you hide. Morrison smiled, but it was not a pleasant expression. Captain, I appreciate the offer, but humans have a saying, the best defense is a good offense. This is not a game, Admiral. These machines will destroy you. Perhaps, Morrison said, but we are going to make them work for it. The meeting continued for another hour, but Veltar realized that nothing he said would change the human decision. They were committed to a course of action that would almost certainly result in their extinction. As he prepared to return to his ship, Morrison made one final statement that would haunt Veltar for years to come. Captain, you asked for help and we are giving it to you. You're going to solve your Devourer problem permanently. Veltar wanted to argue, but the words would not come. He had seen that expression before in the eyes of Zephyrian warriors who chose to make final stands against impossible odds. The humans were not confused about what they faced. They simply did not care. Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Virginia, watching his fleet move into attack formation. 3 weeks had passed since the first meeting with Captain Veltar, and the human fleet had used every day to gather intelligence about their enemy. The results were not encouraging. Admiral Dr. Amy Rodriguez called from her station. We have finished analyzing the data from the reconnaissance mission. Captain Tony Martinez had taken his stealth ship, the USS Ghost, deep into Devourer territory. The mission had been dangerous, beyond measure, but the intelligence gathered was essential for planning their attack. Report, Morrison ordered. Rodriguez activated the main display. The image showed a system that had once contained 3 inhabited worlds. Now it held only empty space and massive mechanical structures that defied easy description. The Devourer are not just consuming worlds randomly, Rodriguez said. They are building something. Each consumed planet becomes part of a larger construction project. Morrison studied the display. The mechanical structures formed geometric patterns across the entire star system. Energy flowed between them in visible streams of light. Kind of construction? We believe it is a weapon, sir. A weapon capable of destroying entire star systems simultaneously. The bridge fell silent. Morrison had suspected the Devourers had larger goals than simple expansion. But this was worse than his worst fears. Colonel Rick Harper stepped forward. Admiral, if they complete this weapon, they could sterilize the entire galaxy. How long until completion? Based on their current construction rate, approximately 18 months, Rodriguez replied. Morrison turned to look at the refugee ships floating nearby. Captain Veltar had been trying to convince the humans to evacuate for weeks. The Zephyrian captain could not understand why any species would choose to fight when running was still possible, but Morrison understood something that Veltar did not. Running would only delay the inevitable. The Devourers would eventually build their weapon and use it to cleanse the galaxy of all organic life. The only choice was to stop them now or watch everything die later. Commander Sullivan Morrison called. "Yes, sir," signaled the fleet. "We begin the operation in 6 hours." The human plan was ambitious beyond reason. Rather than trying to match the Devourers in direct combat, they would strike at the machine's greatest weakness, their coordination system. Captain Martinez had discovered that all Devourer units were controlled by a central intelligence network. The machines communicated through quantum entanglement across vast distances, allowing perfect coordination between units separated by light years. Dr. Helen Price, the fleet's chief scientist, had spent 3 weeks developing a weapon that could disrupt quantum entanglement fields. The weapon existed only in theory, had never been tested, and might not work at all. "It is suicide," Captain Veltar said, when Morrison explained the plan. "Even if your weapon works, you would need to reach the center of Devourer space to deploy. That is impossible." "Difficult, not impossible," Morrison replied. "And it is the only chance we have." The Zephyrian captain looked exhausted. His people had been watching the human preparations with growing dismay. Everything the humans did confirmed their worst fears about this primitive but aggressive species. "Admiral, please listen to reason. Take your ships and evacuate your colonies. My people have technology that can hide entire star systems from detection. We can help you disappear." Morrison appreciated the offer, but he could not accept it. "Captain, humans do not hide. We fight." "Why?" Veltar asked desperately. "Why choose certain death over possible survival?" It was a question Morrison had been asked many times in his career, usually by species that did not understand human nature. The answer was simple, even if the reasons behind it were complex. "Because if we run now, we will spend the rest of our lives running, and eventually there will be nowhere left to run to." The attack began at 0600 hours ship time. The human fleet split into 3 groups. Morrison led the main assault force, directly toward the largest Devourer concentration. Commander Sullivan took her fast attack ships to hit supply lines and communication relays. Captain Martinez led the deep penetration team carrying Dr. Price's experimental weapon. The first contact with enemy forces came 6 hours into the mission. The Devourers were everything the Zephyrians had described and more. Machines the size of small moons moved through space with impossible grace. Their weapons converted matter to energy in real time, creating beams of destruction that could cut through the heaviest armor like paper. The USS Oregon was the first human ship to die. It simply vanished in a flash of converted matter, taking 200 crew members with it. The USS Nevada followed 30 seconds later. Morrison watched his ships die and felt the familiar cold anger that had carried him through 20 years of military service. The Devourers fought without emotion, without passion, without the primal fury that drove human warriors into impossible battles. That would be their weakness. "All ships, implement Protocol Phoenix," Morrison ordered. Protocol Phoenix was humanity's most extreme military doctrine. If conventional weapons failed, humans would escalate to increasingly desperate measures. Antimatter bombs, artificial black holes, stellar manipulation, anything and everything that could destroy the enemy. The USS Carolina deployed its antimatter arsenal, creating explosions that briefly outshone the local star. 3 Devourer units were destroyed, but dozens more moved to replace them. The USS Montana used gravity weapons to collapse a section of space, crushing 5 enemy machines in a localized black hole. The Devourers adapted within minutes, modifying their formations to avoid similar attacks. Meanwhile, Captain Martinez pushed deeper into enemy territory. His mission was to reach the quantum communication hub at the center of the Devourer network. Dr. Price sat in the ship's laboratory, making final adjustments to her experimental weapon. "Captain," she said over the intercom, "the device is ready. But I need to warn you, the power requirements are enormous. Deploying it will drain our entire power grid." "Will we have enough power to get home?" Martinez asked. "No, sir. This is a one-way mission." Martinez looked at his crew. 38 men and women who had volunteered for what everyone knew was a suicide mission. They had families, dreams, futures they would never see. But they also understood what was at stake. Dr. Price Martinez said calmly, "Prepare for deployment." At the main battle, Admiral Morrison watched the tactical display with growing concern. Human losses were mounting rapidly. They had destroyed dozens of Devourer units, but hundreds more remained. Worse, the machines were adapting to human tactics with frightening speed. Then Captain Danny Foster aboard the USS Texas made a discovery that changed everything. "Admiral, I am reading massive energy fluctuations from the Devourer network. Is disrupting their communication system." Morrison felt a surge of hope. Martinez had reached the target. All ships, maximum assault. Now, while they are vulnerable. For the next 10 minutes, the human fleet threw everything they had at the confused Devourer forces. Without their central coordination, the machines began making mistakes, attacking, each other moving in uncoordinated patterns. Then Dr. Price's weapon fully activated. Across 3 star systems, quantum entanglement fields collapsed simultaneously. The central intelligence that had controlled countless Devourer units for millennia suddenly went silent. Machines that had never known individual thought were forced to operate independently. Most simply stopped functioning. Those that remained active moved without purpose or coordination. Human ships hunted them down one by one, eliminating the remnants of a threat that had destroyed 4 civilizations. Admiral Morrison stood on his bridge, watching the last Devourer unit die in a burst of weapons fire. Around him, his crew worked. In exhausted silence, they had won, but the cost had been enormous. Captain Veltar's voice came over the communication system. "Admiral Morrison, our sensors show no remaining Devourer activity in this sector." "Confirmed, Captain. The threat has been eliminated." There was a long pause before Veltar responded. "I do not understand how this was possible." Morrison smiled grimly. "Captain, you asked for help. We gave it to you. Human help just looks different than what you expected." 6 months after the Battle of Kepler's Gate, Captain Veltar stood on the observation deck of New Harmony Station and watched something he had never thought possible. Zephyrian children were playing with human children in the station's central garden. The sight filled him with emotions he could not name. Joy, certainly, but also confusion and a deep sense of gratitude that he still struggled to understand. Admiral Morosal appeared beside him at the viewing window. The human admiral looked older than he had 6 months ago. The battle against the Devourers had cost him dearly. 37 ships destroyed, nearly 8,000 human lives lost. Captain Martinez and his entire crew had died deploying the quantum weapon that saved both species. "Hard to believe, is it not?" Morrison said quietly, as Veltar replied. "When my people first detected your fleet, we thought you had come to destroy us." Morrison smiled slightly. "I remember. You were terrified when you saw our warships instead of transport vessels. We could not understand why you would respond. 2. A request for refugee assistance with military force. And now?" Veltar was quiet for a long moment, watching a small Zephyrian girl teach a human boy how to make patterns with colored sand. "Now I understand that sometimes the best way to help someone is to eliminate the thing that is trying to hurt them." Reconstruction had taken months. After the Devourer network collapsed, the human fleet had spent weeks hunting down the remaining machines. Each deactivated unit was carefully studied by joint human and Zephyrian science teams. Dr. Amy Rodriguez made the most important discovery. The Devourers were not originally a weapon of conquest. They had been created by an ancient civilization. As a resource management system, something had gone wrong with their programming thousands of years ago, turning them into galaxy-consuming monsters. "The irony is terrible," Dr. Helen Price had explained during one of the research briefings. "They were designed to preserve life by efficiently managing resources. Instead, they nearly destroyed all life in the galaxy." The Zephyrians had honored their promise to share their advanced technology. Human lifespans were already beginning to extend as Zephyrian medical techniques were integrated into human medicine. Communication across human space now took minutes instead of months. But more importantly, the two species had formed something neither had expected, a genuine friendship. Admiral Veltar said, "I owe you an apology for what? For doubting your intentions, for thinking you had misunderstood our request for help." Morrison turned to face him. Captain, you had every reason to doubt. Most species would have seen refugees as a burden rather than an opportunity. But humans are not like most species, no, Morrison agreed. We are not. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Commander Beth Sullivan. The human officer approached with the quick, efficient movement that Veltar had learned to associate with important news. Admiral, we have received a communication from the Outer Rim. Long-range sensors have detected another refugee fleet. They appear to be from the Altarian Republic. Veltar felt his stomach tighten. The Altarians were another species that had been fighting the Devourers. If they were fleeing as refugees, it meant their civilization had also fallen. How many ships? Morrison asked. Approximately 50 vessels, sir. They are requesting safe passage through human territory. Morrison and Veltar exchanged glances. The same scenario was repeating itself. Another desperate species seeking help from the humans. What are your orders, Admiral? Sullivan asked. Morrison was quiet for a moment, looking out at the children. Playing in the garden, Veltar could see him thinking, weighing options and consequences. Prepare the Third Fleet for immediate deployment, Morrison said finally. Veltar felt a familiar chill. Admiral, surely this situation is different. The Devourers are gone. These refugees need transportation, not military intervention, do they? Morrison asked. Commander Sullivan, what else did the long-range sensors detect? Sullivan checked her datapad. Unknown energy signatures following the refugee fleet at a distance of approximately 2 light-years. The signatures do not match any known technology. Something is hunting them, Morrison said. Something we have never encountered before. Veltar understood immediately. The galaxy was full of predators. The Devourers had been only one threat among many. Other dangers existed, other species or machines or forces that preyed upon the weak and defenseless. The Altarians asked for safe passage, Morrison continued. What they really need is for us to eliminate whatever is hunting them. You would risk human lives for a species you have never met? Morrison smiled, and this time the expression was warm rather than grim. Captain, that is what friends do. They help each other. 3 days later, Veltar stood on the bridge of his own ship, now fully repaired and upgraded with human technology. He was part of the joint fleet heading to assist the Altarian refugees. The human response had been immediate and overwhelming. 47 warships, including some of the most advanced vessels in human space. The fleet also carried medical supplies, food, temporary shelters, and everything needed to support 50,000 refugees, but the primary cargo was weapons and warriors. Admiral Morrison commanded from the USS Virginia, now equipped with improved quantum disruption technology. Commander Sullivan led the Fast Attack Squadron. Colonel Harper commanded a full Marine Expeditionary Force as they approached the refugee fleet. Veltar found himself thinking about the conversation that had started this entire adventure. The Zephyrians had asked for help, and the humans had responded with warships. At the time, it had seemed like a terrible misunderstanding. Now he realized it was the most perfect understanding possible. The Altarian refugees were in worse condition than the Zephyrians had been. Their ships were heavily damaged, their population reduced to fewer than 2 million survivors. Their leader, Admiral Kexter, was suspicious and frightened when the human fleet arrived. Requested safe passage, not military intervention. The Altarian admiral said during the first communication. Veltar smiled as he listened to the familiar words. Admiral Morrison's response was equally familiar. Admiral Kexter, we understand your situation perfectly. We are here to help, but not in the way you expected. The unknown energy signatures that had been following the Altarian fleet revealed themselves within hours. They were not machines like the Devourers, but something worse. A species of bioengineered predators that hunted other intelligent life for sport. The battle was brief but intense. The human fleet deployed tactics that had been refined during the Devourer War. The predator species was powerful but had never faced an enemy that fought with such coordinated aggression. When the last enemy ship was destroyed, Admiral Kexter contacted the human fleet with a message that was becoming familiar to human ears. I do not understand how this was possible. We thought you had come to attack us when we saw your warships. Admiral Morrison's response was patient and kind. Admiral, you asked for help, and we gave it to you. Human help just looks different than what most species expect. Later, as both refugee fleets settled into temporary quarters at New Harmony Station, Veltar found himself in conversation with Admiral Kexter. The Altarian was struggling to understand what had happened. The humans risk their lives for strangers, Kexter said. They spend their resources to help species they have never met. Why? Veltar thought about the question for a long time before answering. They understand something that we forgot during our long peace. Sometimes the only way to protect the innocent is to destroy those who would harm them. They care about the innocent. Because, Veltar said, watching human and Zephyrian children teaching Altarian youngsters how to play their games, that is what friends do. They help each other. The conversation was interrupted by an announcement. From Station Command, another refugee fleet had been detected on the Outer Rim. Another species, fleeing from another threat? Veltar smiled as he heard Admiral Morrison's voice over the communication system, giving orders to prepare another rescue fleet. The humans would respond with warships, of course. The refugees would be confused and frightened, just as the Zephyrians had been. But eventually, they would understand what Veltar had learned. When humans offer to help, they mean it. They just have their own way of showing it.